Good morning, distinguished guests, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. I, Apurva Singh, on behalf of TERI, extend a warm greeting and welcome you all to the 23rd edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit. Before we commence the session, a brief safety announcement. TERI is a health, safety, and environment certified organization. In case of any untoward incident like fire, evacuation is required. You are required to exit from this hall from the nearest exit gate without any panic. In case of fire, fire marshals will take position in the aisles and exit gates to help you evacuate. Today's session is on Just Transition Framework for a Sustainable Future in India's Coal Mining Regions. As we embark on this enriching discussion, I extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished speakers today. We have with us today Shri Amrit Lal Meena ji, Secretary, Ministry of Coal, Mr. Jivesh Nandan, Distinguished Fellow, TERI, and Mr. Girish Sethi, Senior Director, Energy Program, TERI. We begin today's thematic track with a welcome address by Mr. Girish Sethi. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Arpita. So, good morning once again, and on behalf of TERI, and let me say now from Energy Program, I think I would like to welcome the Secretary, Ministry of Coal, Mr. Amrit Lal Meena, to this thematic track, which is on the Just Transition Framework for a Sustainable Future in India's Coal Mining regions. This is one of the tracks, I think, sir. I think as I was just mentioning you while coming, I think WSDS is in TERI's flagship event, and it was inaugurated yesterday by the Vice President of India, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar ji, and also we had the Environment Minister, and quite a lot of other international dignitaries were present yesterday. And we had many plenary sessions yesterday, and today we have mostly the thematic tracks, around 15 thematic tracks spread over the whole day. At least there are 3 in this room, in this complex itself, and there are quite a few other happening on, mostly around sustainable development, energy, environmental issues. In fact, there is one going on in parallel, which is around the 2050 framework, which TERI has developed on the power sector. So there are quite a few specific focus topics, and this is one of the topics which we are looking at in this thematic track. We at TERI have been working on this subject for close to around 2.5 years or so. And I would just like to mention that the framework which we have, the team TERI has developed during this period is actually, I would say, really a bottom-up kind of an approach. We have interacted with the various stakeholders in the coal mining regions, in the coal producing states, specifically in Jharkhand, Odisha, and Chhattisgarh. And I think the team has interacted with at least close to 1,000 surveys they have undertaken. 50 focus group discussions have been held in at least 7 districts in these 3 states. So that's truly a bottom-up kind of approach, and we have also interacted with quite a few other entities around who are active in this field. I think just on 31st of July, we had a detailed seminar also in Calcutta, which was jointly held with the ISM Dhanbad, IIT ISM Dhanbad, and we had very good interactions on that. And 31st January, yeah, in Calcutta, sorry, yeah. So I think this framework is something which we, although it is now coming out as a kind of a document which we would like to get it released from you, sir. But I think I personally believe, I think this is something which should be seen as a dynamic document, and one can continue improving as we move forward in terms of seeing how things can get implemented at the ground level. The framework overall, I think the detailed presentation will be made by my colleague Amrita. She's there afterwards. But I think it broadly covers 2 parts, the institutional aspects, and then it talks about the functional aspects, looking at aspects related to consensus building, on socio-economic transformation, and on the overall green developmental issues. So I would not like to take much time, but broadly, I think you are hard pressed for time. You have another meeting immediately after at 12 o'clock or so. So I'll just stop here, but thanks once again, sir, for gracing this occasion. And I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to all the other panelists who are joining, Sabina and quite a few others who are here, who have actually helped us develop this document over the last 1.5 years or so. So once again, thanks to all of you who have joined here. I know there are other parallel sessions going on and you have chosen to come here. So definitely it means that you have interest in the subject. And once again, thanks to all of you for joining. And of course, welcoming you, sir. Thank you, sir, Jivishananji, for all your support all these months. I think he's the guiding force, sir, I think, for us ever since he has joined us in TERI in the energy program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Girish sir, for summing up the work that we do here at TERI. I now invite Shri Jivesh Nandanji to give his special remarks.
Thank you very much. Shri Amrit Lal Meena, Secretary, Ministry of Coal, Government of India. Girish Sethi, my colleague, and some of other colleagues, as well as all distinguished people who have come here to attend this session. Now, I would like to share a few thoughts about transition. And let's say, I consider that this is the century when transition of energy, not only of coal, if we talk in more generalized term, we are going to see this. And it is not going to be only in the next decade or 2 decades. Because, world is made up of so many countries at different levels of development. And their own priorities and their own, considerations will be very different. And everyone will move at their own pace. So it is the whole century that we will see the transition taking place. And energy, if you look at this transition, then it is not only, let's say, changing the form of energy that we will be using or producing that particular form of energy from other sources of energy available from nature. It will actually be, it will affect everyone because we have become so dependent on energy in the last, let's say, 100 years. It was only in 1880 or so that we started generating electricity in a big way. And that is when our energy use really exponentially increased. And electricity became the easiest way to use energy. And we have all adopted that. We therefore, it is not only that form of energy, that is electricity, but everything related to this in this value chain is going to see a transition. Many things will be reinvented as far as energy is concerned. Many things that we thought is not very important some two centuries ago will come back. And therefore, I look at transition in a very broad way. Now, let us try to come to what we are talking about today. It is transition of, let's say, a coal mining, one particular mine it can be, but in general, it is the whole sector. Because in the next few decades, we are going to transition from using coal as a source of energy. But I will also look at it from different layers. One layer of this transition is technology. And if you stop using a particular type of technology, and then a technology is not only at one place, it is made up of a series of ancillary technologies, activities which build around this. So that is one. Another layer which I will always see is the human layer, because the technology which was being used for that particular source of energy, there was so much of human involvement in that. How will they get affected by this transition? And how do we manage it so that everyone is on board? Then, another aspect is the economy layer, in the sense that It is, if you go to a coal mine township today, you will find that that whole town is completely dependent on this mine. So there are all aspects of economy that has developed around a coal mine. Everything is going to change when we talk about transition. Then how do we take care of that? If you look at it, all schools, all hospitals, all subsidiaries, activities, even transportation, everything around that town, that township is all about mining. And everything will change once we transition. So there are so many aspects. And whatever new we do, whatever reskilling, whatever else we do, everything has to be, this time at least, has to be environmentally pro, in the sense that what we did, let's say a century ago, was not really, we were not bothered about environment. But what we will do now, we will have to take care of environment in anything that we do new. And any new thing has so many risks. Who is going to take care of those risks? If somebody has to put some finance, how risky is that financing? And then who is going to take care of that risk? So then the whole question opens up. And I'm very happy that we are here to discuss this. And we will further discuss it. I would like to, tell Secretary Kool that after this we will have a panel and we will discuss it in greater detail. And it is really a privilege that you have come here today. You are listening to this, and you will also share your ideas, because I understand that Government of India and especially Ministry of Coal is very alive to transition, and government is working a lot on transition. So this is the time when actually organizations which are in civil space, who are working in transition, they can join hands at some level and work together. So it is a great opportunity, and it is a privilege that Coal Secretary is with us today, and we would like to listen to him. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those insightful words. We would now have the report released by Shri Amrit Lal Meenaji, Secretary, Ministry of Coal. I request Arpita to hand over the copies to the dignitaries. I would also request the authors to please join the stage. Jayant sir, Arpita. You can bring more copies, Arpita. It's there.
Yeah. You can jointly hold it.
Thank you very much, sir, for releasing the report. I now request you to kindly deliver the keynote address.
Respected Sri Jivesh Nandan sir, Girish Sethi ji, distinguished participants, I am honored to be here amongst you during this World Sustainable Development Summit 2024 on this particular thematic session on just transition framework for a sustainable future in India's coal mining regions. I'm extremely happy to have this report here on this just transition. And for us in the Ministry of Coal, this is going to be very useful insight for planning our just transition strategy. As those who are working in the coal sector, be aware of the fact that the sector is very, very diverse and vast. Coal mining has been going on in country since last about 200 years. And in 1974, the nationalization of the coal mines happened. And after that, about 2 lakh hectare of land have been acquired for different coal mines. There are about 900 blocks in the country, 900 coal mines in the country. About 500 are managed by our PSUs, Coal India Limited, Singareni Coal Company, and remaining 400 are being to be managed or are being managed by the private sector, captive and commercial mine auction holders. Currently, about 400 mines are into operation. Out of this 2 lakh hectare of the land, about 30,000 hectare worth of land is decoaled or not fit for coal mining purposes. Land had been acquired, either coal resources have been taken out or the coal resources are not possible to be taken out because of the geographical constraint or the viability issues. So this is the land which is required to be repurposed. Hitherto, the focus of Ministry of Coal has been always to meet the demand of coal, to meet the power sector requirement and other sectors of the economy. But fortunately, now after the policy shift in 2020, where large-scale private sector involvement have been brought into through commercial coal mine auctioning, the production capacity has gone up. Therefore, the focus is now gradually shifting away from only the production priority to the other parts, that is the just transition, repurposing of the land resources, and see that the communities who were hitherto dependent on the coal mining for their livelihood, some alternatives are thought about. So in that context, the recommendations of this just transition framework would be very useful for us. I would like to tell this house that Ministry of Coal has created a just transition and sustainability division within the ministry in last few years. That division is doing extremely well. And to give you an idea, all our coal companies have been advised to take up large-scale afforestation on the land, which is no more required for the coal mining purposes. And over 19,000 hectare of land, green patch have been developed, afforestation have been carried out. Ministry of Environment and Forest have recognized this effort of Ministry of Coal and have came out with a policy of accredited compensatory afforestation, meaning thereby that these patches of the forest developed by the coal mining can be considered by the Ministry of Environment and Forest towards the future need of diversion of the forest land for new mines. So if a patch of, let's say, 100 hectare have been afforested by coal mine, Coal India Limited, then it can be offered toward a future forest land diversion proposal. So this has given us a lot of incentive to develop more and more new patches, because whatever we develop on the decoaled land, it will help us in getting the new additional forest land for our new mines. So this is a big policy change that has came into, and we are benefiting. More than 3,000 hectare of land out of this 19,000 hectare which have been afforested have been identified to be offered under this accredited compensatory afforestation under the process laid down by MOEFCC. This is being notified by the state government, so that to this extent we can divert additional forest land for our new mining purposes. Another important effort that is being done is to survey the land and see that wherever possible, we should convert these land for pump storage projects. Now there is focus of government for development of pump hydro projects. So in the coal regions, you might have seen there is a lower reservoir. Normally in the open cast about 150 to 200 or up to 300 meter also depth, the coal is taken out, the OB and coal is taken out. So there is a huge water reservoir and a natural head of maybe 100 meter or 150 meter or 200 meter. So if a upper reservoir is built and a hydro plant is installed and a solar is also installed in the periphery because land is already there. So solar plus pump storage, it can be put to the better renewable energy project. So we have identified about 20 such potential sites in the decoaled mines, and the feasibility studies are now being carried out. We propose to offer it to the private sector in the revenue sharing model. We offer them the land, the water body, existing head, and land for setting up the solar. Private sector brings in the capex, operate it, and share the revenue. This we have done in the abandoned mines for the coal extraction also, and have proved to be very, very useful. Coal India has left many mines, more than 50, saying that it's no more economically viable to operate. But when it has been offered to the private sector, there is interest. Coal is being produced, they are earning and giving revenue. So on the same principle, the decoaled mine having the potential of setting up of integrated pump storage and hydro are being offered to the private sector. And the results are quite encouraging. We are pushing it, and in times to come, hopefully, some projects will start implementation at the ground. Then large-scale solar power plants. Wherever there are patches available under the RE targets of the government, Coal India has also identified patches in different subsidiaries, and different capacity of solar plants are being taken up primarily to meet our requirement, because being coal sector consumes about 5,000 megawatt of the thermal power, and we have our plans to generate 5,000 plus of the RE so as to achieve net zero within a period of next 3 years. I am happy to share with you that two of the subsidiaries, the Nibali Lignite and the Sigreni, have already developed capacity to generate more than their thermal requirement, and they are broadly net zero. Maybe this financial year, they will certify also that they are net zero. CIL has also their plans for next 3 years. And then we have large scale alternative usage of this land projects where many colonies were there which are no more required. So repurposing of this land is also in the pipeline. Government has also issued a policy in 2022. Ministry of Coal came out with a policy for long-term leasing of this decoaled land for energy-related infrastructure projects. So this also many people are showing a lot of interest, particularly for setting up of coal gasification projects, the green technology promotion. So Coal India is offering land on long-term lease basis. Coal India is offering long-term linkage of the coal. And now government has came out with the policy of viability gap funding support to the gasification. And PFC and RSC have also shown their interest to finance such projects. So land, water, coal, finance, everything has been arranged. And of course, technology is proven. And we are asking the private sector to consider setting up of coal gasification plants of appropriate size, depending on the market requirement of the chemical to be produced. So hopefully in times to come, this land would be put to again full use. So towards the end, I thanks TERI for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward for the recommendations which are part of this report and likely outcome of today's panel discussion. And sir, we will be happy to support this initiative by way of action on the ground. So based on the recommendation, if you come out with an action plan, and whatever support is expected of from coal, India, Nibali, we will be happy to support so that demonstrable, successful pilots can be shown. With this, I once again congratulate the entire team who has undertaken this development of the framework and look forward to work in more close association. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful speech. We now have a small token of appreciation from our side. TERI supports the local farmers in the Supi village of Nainital, Uttarakhand in livelihood generation by adopting sustainable agricultural practices. These products are a fruit of their labor, and it is our honor to present them to you. I request Mr. Girish Sethi to present this to Amrit Lal Meena, sir. Thank you so much, Amrit Lal Meena, sir, for your speech. We would now request everyone from the TERI Just Transition team to come together for a group photograph.
Sunil bhai, are you? In fact, his professor from ISM is also here. It's a reunion for them.
A very good afternoon to all of you once again. We would now begin our panel discussion. We have a fantastic line of speakers with us today. The moderator for this session is Mr. Jivesh Nandan, retired IAS and distinguished fellow, TERI. Our panelists include Mr. Binay Dayal, former director technical, CIL, and adjunct professor, IIT ISM Dhanbad, Ms. Sabina Devan, president and executive director, Just Jobs Network, Mr. Ashim Roy, general secretary, Hind Mazdoor Kisan Panchayat, Mr. Vinod Kumar Pandey, GM Environment, CMPDI headquarters, who will be joining us online, and Mr. Madhuban Pandey, co-founder, Score Livelihood Foundation. I now hand it over to Mr. Jivesh sir to please moderate the session.
I think let us start. I would like to invite all the panelists to please come and join. Yeah. Come. You can come a little bit on this side. Yes, now I think all of us have settled down. This is a privilege to have experts from many areas who are with me on this panel. And we would like to, but before that, I think, can we have we will have a presentation on the framework, because, that will set the tone as to what we are going to discuss in greater detail. So if you can make a presentation.
I would now request Arpita to come and give the Just Transition Framework presentation. Can you please switch to their laptop? Right, so good morning, everyone, and I'm very glad to give you a bird's eye view of what our framework contains. So moving on, we did quite an extensive literature review. Right, okay. And we came up with a case for why we need a just transition in India's coal mining regions at all. And the four major ones we found, the themes that we created were a high labor dependence on the coal value chain, not just CIL being one of the largest employers in the country, but also sectors connected to the coal production, coal mining industry, such as, say, the railways, which gets 40% of its revenue from freight charges on coal, and say, obviously, the steel sector, the cement sector, and the power sector. And then the general socio-economic backwardness of coal-producing regions. None of us need an introduction to that. And the prevalence of informal and contract labor, increasingly since nationalization of coal in the 70s and liberalization in the 90s. And the need for economic diversification and revenue substitution, because our analysis of state revenue showed that in the major coal-producing states of Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, coal royalty forms anywhere between 15 to 27% of the state's non-tax revenue collection. And coming to a theoretical grounding, there are different approaches to climate justice in academic literature. And the three that we chose for our report are procedural justice, distributive justice, and restorative justice. And procedural justice becomes important in the early stages of just transition planning because it places a strong emphasis on extensive stakeholder consultation and making sure that the benefits of a just transition are distributed equitably among all stakeholders. And distributive justice, on the other hand, would lead from procedural justice in that, say, the transition to cleaner energy, the benefits of a cleaner energy transition are distributed among all stakeholders and not just concentrated in one geography or in one community or of stakeholders. And coming to restorative justice, our framework has an emphasis on the redevelopment of coal mining regions to move towards a greener future and to improve the existing status quo of coal mining regions. And based on our theoretical grounding, we came up with 8 principles which guided our framework development, which I'll come to later on in my presentation. You can take a better look at it in the report when it's released. And as part of our literature review, we also went through several government policies as to see whether there is already some sort of provision for the welfare of coal mining communities. And the first one that we saw is the coal mine closure guidelines. And we see that in the latest edition of the coal mine closure guidelines, which came out in 2022, there is no mining plan which is needed for the approval of mining activities can be passed without the inclusion of a chapter on the mine closure plan. And in the contents of the mine closure plan, there is a specific section on social and socio-economic considerations, which involve, say, reskilling and redevelopment and
benefits on, say, retirement benefits for a certain group of people, but that does not see, of course, the inclusion of the informal workforce, which forms a big section of the coal mining workforce. And the District Metal Foundation Fund, like we all know, we saw that in the 5 top contributing states with the highest DMF collections, they also happen to be the highest coal producing states in our country. And in their DMF collections, coal contribution forms more than 50% of the DMF collection, which means that DMF funds can be utilized for the welfare of local communities. And I've not mentioned it here in the slide, but the use of DMF funds is mandated by the Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kalyan Kshetra Yojana, which states that 60% of the DMF funds should be used for high priority areas like education, healthcare, and such, and the remaining 40% be used for physical infrastructure development and 2 other areas. And coming to corporate social responsibility of mining companies, CIL's CSR policy mandates that 80% of the CSR funds be used within 25 kilometers radius of project sites, headquarters, and wherever they are based. And that also has a framework like the PMKKY, that the funds be used for areas like environmental conservation, healthcare, rural development, all of that. So we do see that there is a mandate for these funds to be used meaningfully. And we also took a look at the state action plans on climate change in the major coal producing states, that is Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh. Odisha, sorry, not Madhya Pradesh. And we see that there is a study by the Department of Science and Technology of the Government of India, which says that these states are also the most vulnerable to climate change. So mining regions in these areas have the double burden of climate change related, say, contingencies, and the otherwise also the brunt that they face from coal mining activities. So if there are all these policies which are looking out for the welfare of local coal mining communities, why do we need a just transition framework at all? So like I mentioned before, one could always argue for a greater focus in the mine closure plans, for a greater focus on, say, informal workers and of the induced labor, as well as, like we have mentioned, it has been mentioned a couple of times before, that coal mining regions see a very isolated focus of the economy is dominated by coal production and related activities in the service sector as well. So we could see regulations and more government action on that. And there is a scope for the DMF allocation and utilization to be done better, because a study by CSCP showed that most of the DMF funds are being used for low priority areas, which include, say, physical infrastructure, and not enough being allocated for high priority areas like education and healthcare, given that they also have a long gestation period to show results. And there's also better scope for better utilization of CSR funds. So we see that even though it's not particularly a bad thing, most of the CSR funds, according to PIB data, is being concentrated in healthcare instead of, even though there could be a more balanced distribution of CSR fund utilization among the other areas of which are mandated in CIL CSR policy. And the SAPCCs of the states that we studied have remained the same for the past 10 years. And as we all know, the world has come a long way in the climate discourse in the last 10 years. Now, coming to our framework itself, there are 2 parts to the framework, part A and part B, the institutional aspect and the functional aspect. There's a mistake here. The first part A with the blue boxes, is the institutional aspect, and the second box with the multicolored boxes is the functional aspect. So the institutional aspect of our framework talks about what kind of structural changes we need in our institutions to enable a just transition in coal mining regions, because we see that this cannot be the effort of just one single body, one single ministry, but it needs to be coordinated across different ministries and at the national, state, and district levels. So at the national level, we suggest for the creation of a national just transition body, which includes not just, say, the officials from the Ministry of Coal, but also, given that many areas of a just transition would be cutting across healthcare, social welfare, all of that, we would need cooperation from various ministries at the national level. And at the state level, we are arguing for state just transition task forces, which would also in turn look at the functioning of district level, local level accountability bodies, which would include grassroots CSOs, coal company officials, public authorities, PRI representatives, to ensure that they are the ones who eventually define what a just transition looks like from them. So just like emphasizing our bottom-up approach. And in part B, we have various themes, like we talked about our theoretical grounding, socio-economic transformation, and that is how we imagine our, say, procedural justice, distributive justice, and restorative justice panning out on the ground. Branch these out further into focus areas in our field work on the ground, and which we have noticed that there could be a greater leveraging of participated governance mechanisms and the training and capacity building of concerned authorities, particularly public authorities, and awareness building among the communities who are affected by coal mining activities. And moving on to socioeconomic transformation for distributive justice, we've seen that there needs to be something done about the informal workers, because there's not enough focus on them, even though they are the form a majority of the coal mining workforce. And then alternative livelihood creation, gender sensitive development, because we don't, even though the women were not directly involved in mining until 2019, when the ban was lifted on their inclusion on their working in the mining sector, we do see that many women are affected indirectly and are also very involved in illegal mining in areas like Jharia and Jharkhand. And coming to the enhancement of social infrastructure, a lot of all coal mining companies are involved in the development of social infrastructure like schools and hospitals in mining areas. And the closure of a mine should not mean that these cease to operate or lose the importance or, say, their capability. And coming to green development for restorative justice, this is to ensure that these coal mining regions have a greener and a better future after, say, the coal mine closure, due to various reasons, whether it is loss making or whatever be the reason that a coal mine closes. So there could be the promotion of clean energy technology, and you see on the green boxes on the right-hand side are all the interventions. So you can see the promotion of agri-photovoltaics, electrify public transport, etc., and land repurposing and redevelopment, which is very important for, say, solar or other forms of renewable energy, and containing environmental risks, because we see that coal mining, especially especially done through open cast mining, affects the water availability, the groundwater table. And this is where I'll skip a bit and show you what it ultimately looks like, because I've broken it down to fit the presentation. So our framework looks like this, and the yellow part that we see here it's coming next. So the yellow box over here is a generally applicable just transition framework, and I broke it down in the presentation for you. And the gray box over here is a specific application to coal mining regions. And whatever we have mentioned in the gray box over here, we have mapped it out on a temporal and spatial scale, say from now until 2070, which is India's net zero emissions targets. And if we divide that into periods, if we divide it into periods of 3, we come up with 15 years from now until 2070. And at the national level, we have also mapped them out on the national, state level, and the district level. So whatever's in the boxes in red are our socio-economic transformation, and whatever is in the boxes in yellow are for consensus building, which was our first theory. And finally, we see the green boxes for green development. You'll be able to see that better in the soft copy or the hard copy, whichever is available soonest. So I'll end my presentation with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arpita Victor. It was a very comprehensive, capture of the framework that you people have prepared. Now let us start some discussion, not to limit the discussion, but just to focus a little bit on what we will talk about. I would like to refer to some of the questions which are there in the agenda. So let us start with Sri Binay Dayal. Sri Binay Dayal is, he was Director Technical, Coal India Limited. He has had an illustrious career in Coal India. He worked for more than 35 years with Coal India Limited. And he has been chairman of Talcher Fertilizer Limited also. Right now, he is an adjunct professor with IIT ISM Dhanbad. I would like to, since you have been with Coal India for all these years, I would like you to, mention a little bit also about institutional changes that you feel, not only at the level of Coal India, because, when transition will happen, it has many dimensions. So what are the institutional framework, which is mentioned in the report also, which you feel can be, very useful for such transition to be effective? So if you can tell us a little bit about that also, and other thoughts, please. And we will have to limit ourselves to 5 minutes only because, let us have some question answer at the end. So we have limited time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there was very comprehensive presentation by Madam Arpita Victor. I think it snatched all the words that I have thought that I will be speaking for them on behalf of coal industry. So it is almost having all the things. So I will limit some of my thoughts that what you are working in Coal India Limited, the long span, almost 4 decades. So just to mention that mining, or for that matter, coal mining is a wasting asset. So, and it has to be there. It has to be a starting point will be there. There will be peak period. There will be down period. So any mining asset for not only coal, other also. So in that cycle of its changes, it has different connotation, different problems, and many of the problems that occurs due to closure of mines that needs to be addressed. I think your report has captured it very beautifully. The 5 things that are affected by the closing down activity may be due to reserve exhaustion, maybe due to safety issues, maybe due to, because mining started in India way back in 1774. And with the advent of after 40, 45, 50 years, even before when the railway has come to India, after the advent of railway, when railway started, because the coal is a bulk commodity and it needs to be handled and transported as such. So with the growth of railway, the mining also, coal mining has also grown for the mainly for powering the steam engines of the railway. And the railway had been the greatest beneficiary at that time. Now the railway has moved over the electrification. So railway is still now the greatest beneficiary of the coal handling part, because 40% of their revenue is coming from the coal transportation and all that. So, so coal has, with coal, with 200 years, 250 years, our civilization has grown, and its importance is ingrained in our India, our society as such. And as such, 55% of our commercial energy is being made by that. Even IA projection is there that yes, in 10 years time, it will come down to further 10%. That is 45%. And further 20-25 years, it will be further 10% down, but still it leaves at 35%. Still it leaves at 35%. Even electricity generation, just see, the 70% is coming from coal and fossilized fuel. Recently, last year only, it has seen the increase of renewable energy, including, if you consider hydel also, which is 10% of our electricity generation. The renewable energies from solar or like other it has come at 20%. So even though 35% base will be also there to just that. So what is that? What is unique about the coal mineral coal sector? That it is site specific, and everything needs to be aligned according to that. Township is to be built up, hospitals are to be opened, schools are to be opened, roads are to be made, and everything has been created just like a state kind of thing. So then only you can have a development. Just like go to some of the oldest area of like I think Chirimiri coalfield, the whole economy, whole of township has nothing but except coal. So everything down the direct employment, indirect employment, down the line employment is through coal. So what is the key issues that needs to be seen? First is the livelihoods and employment, that on closure of the coal mines that will be affected. Then there will be community health. You can imagine I have worked there in Coal India, and the northeastern part of our country, where the northeastern region, Margarita town, the coal coal mines are there. Even cost of losing, we were maintaining the central hospital there for the benefit of the public. So all these things have to be taken over. If the mining has ceased, if the schools are there, so a kind of framework has to be there. The biggest challenges that we are facing in this area, that most of the mines and lands, or Secretary Coal has mentioned that we have almost 20,000 after nationalization, we have taken 20,000 hectares of the land, and we have utilized 13,000 and rest is being repurposed. So this is taken under one act, that is Coal Bearing Area Act. And Coal Bearing Act, we cannot transfer the land as such for any other purpose other than coal. Okay. Now there is a long-term lease, as Secretary Coal has mentioned, that there had been a long-term lease allowed to utilize for the energy purposes, like he was talking about the coal gasification and all that. The biggest hurdle in police in Poland, when I visited Poland, where was just transition in the coal field, the whole lot of quarters, miners' quarter, they got renovated and they were sold. They were offered to public as such, and people are happily living there. Even a convention center was built up on the open cast reclaimed land. So to enable these kind of things, we have to go in a long way. So that is what to do with the physical and social infrastructure, and all the laws governing to that needs to be changed. That needs to be aligned in that way. So repurposing the resources is also one thing. Then there is a funding, there is a resource funding. the contribution of a coal sector in the total state exchequer is tremendous, almost to 25 to 30% of the revenue of a coal company is going to either in form of royalty or cess or DMF, District Mineral Foundation funds. And in Odisha is the highest, I think, coal production. There is more than 200 million ton there. So the Odisha is the highest, 13,000. It is has accumulated 13,000 crores of DMF fund. But utilization, we have around 78,000, 80,000 of DMF fund. But utilization of DMF fund for their purpose and mining region is hardly even 50%. Even there was a green compensation cess which ceased to exist 5 years back and again has started 400 rupees per ton of coal. Now it has come again. These can be converted into green foundation, green fund, green transition fund, together with our CSR fund, together with our GST compensation and all these things. This could be combined, and this could be, there can be a 3-tier structure as was suggested here, that at national level, because coal is a central subject. Coal is a central subject, and and the DMF fund is being administered by the Ministry of Coal. So Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Mines, and then MOEF and all that, afforestation kind of thing. It could be at one tier at national level to see that how the transition is really going to happening. Then we have to geospatially map all the areas where the almost 1/3 of the regions of the states of the Jilas, they are having connected with the 1 or 2 sorts of the coal. Okay, so we could map that, and accordingly that at national level, at one tier will be there. Then another tier will be at regional level to develop a regional framework. Then other will be at district level with having the community and all that. With that, and with working in consonance, and to develop what Mr. Meena has said, that give me a action plan, what to do. Just like that, many of the cases we were integrated solar hydro pump units were there for the generation of electricity on the public partnership private basis. Okay, so these are kind of things, some thoughts that has occurred, and thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm sorry that I had to indicate to you, but since your experience in this sector, it was very fruitful listening to you. Now I would like to request Ms. Sabina Dewan. She is the founder and executive director of the Just Jobs Network. And she is also non-resident fellow at the Kasi School of Public Policy at the University of New Hampshire. And before this, she was also a director and senior fellow for international economic policy at the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. So she is with us. It is our privilege. And, as we have talked about reskilling the workforce and creation of new jobs, because when we transition in a coal mine, when it closes down. So I would like to, to tell us a little bit on that also. Please.
Okay, that's working. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to be here. And I'd like to start by congratulating the team. So Dr. Mitra, Apurva, Arpita, on your fantastic work. And it's been a privilege to be part of the process, the consultation process as this framework was being developed. So really excited to go further into detail into this wonderful framework. So I want to broadly make 3 points. First is the context in which our economy is very important, right? When we think about a just transition, we are facing what is a very, very distressed labor market right now. There just simply aren't enough jobs, right? If I go through the numbers, just a few numbers, 1 out of every 2 young person, which is between the ages of 15 to 29. So 1 out of every 2 youth is out of the labor market, because many of whom have not been able to find a job and therefore have dropped out entirely. 31% of this segment is not in employment, education, or training, right? So they're just kind of out there doing nothing, basically. Informality has gone up. 57% of all employment is self-employment, and much of this is distressed self-employment, right? So, to survivalist self-employment. So we are facing a context right now, a labor market context that is very, very challenging. And one of the big tendencies that exists in the policy and dare I say research think tank world is to examine our specific area in silos. So if we're looking at climate change, we look at the impact of climate change on jobs. If we're looking at technology, we look at the impact of technology on jobs. And we think that these are happening in silos. But really, that's not how labor markets work, right? We have to actually look at the holistic impact of energy, the energy transition, climate change, technology, pandemics. All of these are working together in ways that are causing a lot of stress in the labor market. And the simplistic notion of one-to-one, that we take workers from a shut coal mine and we put them into a renewable energy sector, it doesn't work that way, right? So the first point is just not to look at the labor market in these silos, but to understand the entire stressed situation right now. And in that context, we have to think of what the policy and regulatory and frameworks are and solutions are to address labor market challenges. That's point number one. The second point I want to talk about is with respect to skills. So against this backdrop of a highly stressed job market, if we look at all the emphasis that's been put on skills training as the solution, I would argue that the stress on skills is highly exaggerated and oversimplified, right? The problem is much, much bigger than skills. Skills is an important part of the solution, but it's not the only solution. There's lots of other things that have to go on, and this framework lays out several of them. But let's not exaggerate the extent to which skills is going to be the panacea and solve the problem. So within that, let me go into 3 points and examples to make this point clear. Despite all the emphasis that has gone into skills training for well over a decade now, right? Only 4% of respondents in the periodic labor force survey, India's labor force survey, only 4% actually identify as having received any kind of formal training, right? Only 24%, actually a little less than 24%, identify as having any informal training. So, a vast percentage of respondents actually don't identify as having any training at all, despite the fact that we've been putting so much emphasis on we need to train, we need to train, we need to train. Something in the system is broken that people themselves aren't recognizing, whether if they have the skills, which I would argue many of them do, they don't recognize themselves as being skilled. The formal system is only touching very few people. There's no certification and recognition of prior learning. All of this also constricts labor mobility between sectors, right, and geographies. So the skills architecture itself is hugely problematic. Now, against this backdrop, we are saying, okay, now we're going to introduce the energy transition, and let's understand what this really means by way of an example, right? If we look at electric vehicles now, and it's not only a matter of how many people we can skill, but what kind of requisite levels of education there are as we enter a new world, a highly technological world, where the kind of skills we need are much higher order skills. So if we take EVs as an example, you need people that have computer skills. You need people that understand coding. You need, the mechanics are no longer using their hands to work on a system. It's software based, right? So the kinds of skills that you're going to need to address that are also a higher order of skill. And there's a large part of our population that doesn't even have the requisite skills to be able to partake in that. That's not even to mention the downstream effects. If you replace a petrol tank with an EV engine. Think about all the valve producers, the people that make the pipes. We're talking serious downstream effects in terms of both quantity and quality of labor. Last example, again, sticking with EVs, think about a petrol pump. If you have an EV vehicle, you're charging it, maybe you need 2-3 people. A petrol pump right now has anywhere between 15 to 25 to 30 people at a petrol pump, right? So huge effects in terms of employment. Potentially much higher efficiency because of technology in green tech and green energy and so on. But just the simple numbers don't add up, and we really don't know, right? I mean, this is a lot of the how many jobs will be created and lost is more or less conjecture. So really important issues. And the last point that I want to make is with respect to women, right? And with respect to women's employment in this new world that we are building. The fact that women already have much less access to skills, and in this new world where the jobs are already constrained, women are relegated to the lowest level of jobs. So if you take brick kilns, for example, women are already doing the dirtiest work, but if you transition the brick kiln from coal to cleaner sources of energy, women are likely to be squeezed out because that's what happens. We saw this happen during COVID as well. So, there's really a need for thinking through women's role and employment in this new economy, in this new green economy that we're building. We also know that labor mobility for women is restricted. So if we are thinking of closing down coal mines and creating jobs in completely different geographic regions, to what extent are women going to be able to avail those jobs, right? All of this to say that, there are lots of small examples of things that are happening in terms of training women or training small communities to do solar maintenance or solar lamps and selling them and so on. Those are all really worthwhile examples, but we need a big architectural rethink of our system if we're truly going to be able to take account and adapt from dirty fossil fuels, not just coal, but the cascading effects across the economy to cleaner sources of energy. And we need to do this, and this is my last point, we need to do this slowly and deliberately. So all of these targets that we have, we're going to achieve, our net zero in a very short time frame. These have really dire consequences for the humans and social side of things, and that politically is just not viable. It's not certainly not economically viable. And so we need to actually, the urgency of dealing with climate change notwithstanding, we also need to think about this side of it and be very deliberate and thoughtful in how we create institutions and architectures that can help the transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Sabina Dewan. You have, given your insight. What we, just put together as reskilling, and then we think that everything is taken care of, where it is just the start of the problem. So thank you very much. Now I would like to request Mr. Ashim Roy. Ashim Roy has over 30 years of experience in the trade union movement and rich association with social, political, and human rights movement. We are very happy that you are with us today in this panel. And, I would like to really pose that if you could give us some thoughts on this, as to, how do you see the concerns that you face today, that you have dealt with today, they can be mainstreamed when we talk about transition. So, please.
First, thanks for inviting me to this panel. And Arpita's report was fascinating in itself because it kind of captures a lot of dimension of this transition. This is not working. Hello. Is it fine? So my main concern, and I would really like to focus on that, is the vulnerability that one is talking about, and essentially one sees it in terms of informality. But one of the major, and Sabina has already mentioned about it, that one of the major issues of informality is that informality in India is not an exception; it is a norm. And so any transition that takes place with an assumption of such a norm is bound to come into difficulties. And when I look and think and hear people speak, I see the underlying norm to be present, and which is a very difficult thing. It is also true not only for product market and transition from one industry to another industry, it is also true from one labor market to another labor market. And it is not a frictionless transition that normally assumes one to happen. Let's take an example, the coal secretary, and mention fantastic, very important methods of how transition can take place. But it was about energy transition, not fair transition. And that's the crucial point which I want to kind of stress, that energy transition will take place because there is you will incentivize the market, you will do things, you will see that the outcome goes to a particular direction, but those kind of things will surely happen. And such incentivization can possibly create some economic activities or some transformation that actually allows for a or for energy transition to take place. But fair transition has never worked anywhere in any part of the world, even in the earlier kinds of when the deforestation was an issue. When forest, it was a concept that came from the forest workers who said that if you're going to preserve the forest from not being, but what is the question of workers coming up? Now, fortunately for us, this has moved from and local experience of many workers movement through the ITUC into an Paris Convention concept. And so now we are returning back to see how it is grounded in the real economy of it. And that brings me to the idea that we have to ground the fair transition into the economic area or economic concept that we are trying to address it. Let me take an example. If you allow just pure market, and let's even look at a dialogue frame within the framework of the market, at best it will mean a social dialogue between Coal India and the permanent workers, which is not even 20%. So you will give compensation to them, and you will possibly also give some rehabilitation, some retraining. But 80% of the informal workers in the coal India itself will not be adequately addressed because there's no record, like Sabina just said. There's no record, there's no mechanism of how that stable workforce has existed. And so before you even come to a dialogue with them, you have to understand how that stable labor market is working on. But this is still what I would suggest is what I call the informality in the formal sector, which is still identifiable because it is still bounded by some idea of organization, some idea of boundaries within which the informality has been shaped and informality has been addressed. But let us look at the coal sector and what we call the coal economy. And I would go back to what I think everyone has said earlier in their presentation, that the coal economy is a very large economy, and it still gravitates to an informal level of economy there. How do you address that? It cannot be addressed, I would submit and argue, on a project by project basis. It just can't be. It cannot be that I'll make one lake, one height. It doesn't work like that. No developmental model anywhere has worked like that. If you have to address that, one has to conceptualize the developmental model in those areas. Now, I would maybe more specific. The coal economy, and enough survey has been done, it varies between 260 to 280 districts, which are coal sensitive or coal dependency. And if you come to far more, and researchers have done this, they've identified about 30 to 35 coal districts that require massive investment and massive restructuring. Now, how you address that? It cannot be addressed without a political ramification and identifying what is the political mechanism of how you're going to address that transition. And that is very important. It cannot be done, let me say, either purely by a market mechanism or purely by a managerial system that deals around a market system, because it is essentially a structural transformation that's going to happen in this industry. And no structural transformation can happen without a far more larger entities and mechanism of political negotiation and political policy building. And that is, to me, absent in the discourse of the just transition. So I would argue again that we have to address the 30 districts, quantify them, and see what institution can be there to make that transition happen. I'm not even talking about a radical position. I'm talking about just addressing structural questions in transition. If I were to argue much more and say, I want a transformation of that area, I need to have adequately more power. Unfortunately, today, the union movement and the general people's movement in this, and this is where I come from, that sector, so I'll speak on behalf of the sector, we are weak on that. But I do want to say that transition, and particularly the energy transition, that surely will happen. The market will do it, the state will do it. But fair transition requires some kind of aggregation of social power, and that is what is missing. Without that aggregation of social power, the discourse also gets distorted. The discourse also, and the narratives also get shaped by what is called the dominant paradigm. And I think we need to kind of address that. And I would look forward to really working with TERI to see how we address it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is very good point that you have made, and you have really put it forward in the best possible way. You are absolutely right when you say this. And I hope that TERI in future will take that concern very much into its for the future work. But since we are coming towards the end of the session, I think we'll have to hurry up. So I would like to request, we have a online speaker also, Mr. Vinod Pandey. So can we contact him? Is he available online? Is he connected? Then yeah. So welcome, Mr. Vinod Pandey.
Good afternoon.
Let me just introduce Mr. Vinod Pandey. He is a postgraduate in environmental engineering from IIT Kharagpur, and presently working as General Manager Environment in CMPDI Ranchi. He has over 30 years of work experience dealing with such issues. Here, as you are aware, we are talking about just transition in coal mining. And I would like you to, share some thoughts about what do you think are the policy triggers which are needed. You have been, maybe you have been listening to all of us since the last 20, 30 odd minutes, and you see the different perspectives that we have. And I would like your comments on that. So please continue, Mr. Vinod Pandey.
Okay, thank you, sir. After the speech of Binay Dayal, sir, who has been honorable, our DTC.
I think you are mute. Can you?
Sir, am I audible now? Sir, am I audible now? Hello?
Yeah, I think we are still not able to hear you. So you can retry.
Sir, now am I audible? Hey, Abhishek. Just a minute. Abhishek,
Yeah, now I think something is audible. Please come.
Sir, am I audible now?
Yes, very much. Please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir. And after the speech of Binay Dayal, sir, who has been our Director Technical in Coal India Limited, and Sabina Madam, I think there is little left for me to speak on this subject. But as far as the transition is concerned, why I want to focus is on that basically the coal companies, if you see, they have been able to go to those areas which the other people has not been bothered to go to those remote areas. The coal industry, if you see, it is a site-specific industry, and wherever the coal mining has operated, they have contributed a lot for the development of infrastructure, for development of water supply schemes, for CSR, education, infrastructure, and health. So, as far as just transition is concerned, I think the framework in India should be determined by India itself, and it is not basically the type of transition that we have seen in West. There is no specific just transition framework in the West. So as far as transition is concerned, we have to design our own, and it should be India specific, taking into consideration the Indian conditions. As far as framework is concerned, I think the transition to energy which is away from fossil fuel will be gradual, and the contribution of coal based on the national circumstances of India, it will continue to have a fair share even 50 years and beyond, sir. It is not going to die down within 2-3 decades, because we have seen the example of Ukraine, and how it has been detrimental for the national security if you depend on only one source of energy. So a diverse mix of energy is required if you want to secure the energy aspirations of our people and the energy security of the country. Now coming to closure of mines, I think the closure of mines in Indian condition, it will not be abrupt, but it will be gradual. And as Sabina Madam has said, that we'll have to go slowly and deliberately to look after the issues related to the just transition. If you see, sir, I think if we have to see the just transition, I think the state governments will have a major role to play, and possibly the just transition, the funds, the mine closure fund, and whatever the CSR and DMF funds are being contributed by Coal India Limited, the welfare schemes of the state government need to be aligned with the coal companies when we venture for finalization of the final mine closure plan. And also, there are several schemes from the central government and state governments which are operating for the welfare of the community. As far as transition is concerned, I think those schemes need to be aligned with the welfare of the people in mining areas, because we have not been able to translate into reality the implementation of those schemes into remote area where coal companies are operating. Now the next one is, sir, that the responsibility of coal mining, because coal mining is basically a business organization, and mine closure guidelines are basically designed to look after the safety, security of the mines, and also the sustainable post-mining land use. I think when we design the final mine closure plan, the state governments need to be proactive in designing the final mine closure plan. And there is one important aspect of final mine closure plan is that we must have the agreed stakeholders for designing the final mine closure plan. We are now, sir, planning for some final mine closure plan in the state of Meghalaya. And the key component of those final mine closure plans are that how to secure the livelihood of the communities who are impacted by the final closure, because in the state of Meghalaya, the mining rights also vest with the people who belong, whose land is theirs. So the agreed stakeholder, the stakeholder consultation is one of the aspects. And what has been said by previous speaker, that the training, the upskilling and reskilling of people, it is one of the key component of the transition. But at the same time, the creation of job opportunity for the people in the coal region will play a great role, because if we can have reskilling and upskilling of possibly the government of India is also working to a great extent on the Kausal Vikas Yojana and gender equality. But the fact is, creation of jobs should be creation of opportunity, should be the priority of the government to look after the just transition framework. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your insight. I would like to now request Mr. Madhuban Pandey, who has been right besides me, but at the same time, I'm calling you after everyone else. You know, he is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Score Livelihood Foundation. And he has more than 18 years of experience in the development sector, specifically in livelihood, micro enterprise development, and local economic development. And you know, there are many other things which are there in his biodata. I'm not reading everything.
Please don't do that.
So let me just say that you have been working in the mines. You have recently visited some of these mines that the project is looking at. And I would like some of your thoughts. You can talk about other things also, about, you know, bottom-up approach in any such transition. Please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Divesh sir. So I think my job is easier, as eminent speaker had said whatever to be said. Just transition would be different from different people, different stakeholders who are involved in and around coal mining. But my perspective would be more towards the people, the community who are directly, indirectly dependent on the coal mines in and around. As ILO says, greening the economy is a way that is as fair and inclusive as possible to everyone who is directly or indirectly dependent, creating decent job, decent work opportunities, and leaving no one behind, which is very, very important. Just transition, whether you look from the triple bottom line perspective, people, planet, and profit, or you look from the sustainable development perspective, where social, economic, and environment, people or community are at the center. And in any transition, my belief is we have to more careful from the people and social aspects. We understand just transition is complex, as we keep on hearing, and it seems difficult also sometimes, but our collective actions on the ground will certainly help us to achieve the net zero by 2070. So actions, what Principal Secretary had said over here, would be much more important. I'm more worried from the current or the situation from the women perspective, the children perspective, and the adolescent perspective. Men, anyway, they are going to the coal mines, whether it's authorized, unauthorized, they are the bringing the bread and butter to the family. So they have to earn by any means, whether it's legal, illegal, or whatsoever. So apart from the good intent, what everyone sitting over here we are having, we need to have action on the ground, and that is very much important. And in my view, 2070 seems quite ahead of time, but that is not the case. We are losing every day on that account. So we have to take actions as soon as possible. कहीं हम बात ही न करते रह जाएं और काफी कुछ छूट जाए. So we have to be careful on that account. As an organization, we are very committed to contribute to provide alternative source of livelihood through helping people developing the local economic development, so that they have a better choices as far as livelihood is concerned. Recently, as Divesh sir had said, 2 weeks back, I was on the ground, Giridih. We had done a couple of focus group discussion with different target group. I met a very young boy pursuing his graduation first year. His father is working in the coal mine, and he said, मैं कुछ और करना चाहता हूं, पर coal mine में काम नहीं करना चाहता हूं. What does it mean? It means people who are looking at the plight, the different aspects, they are looking for the alternatives as far as their livelihood is concerned. And if this young boy will not get any other opportunities, any other alternatives, he will be bound and forced to play with the coal. So this is our collective responsibility to, and his name is Ajay Kumar Das. I'm having his number. I'm constantly in touch as we are designing and trying to implement just transition framework on the ground. So if you look at the situation at the grassroots level, the people are not having the kind of skills, appropriate skills, which is needed to back them good livelihood options. And they are doing coal work in and around coal mines, are doing other jobs. In a discussion with different players, we also heard when government stops unauthorized coal mining, the theft incidents increases in and around the cities. So they are bound and forced, whether it's good, bad, ugly, but they have to bring their livelihood. So that's where our perspective is to create more alternatives. And when you look at the situation on the ground from the health, sanitation, and hygiene perspective, it's really pathetic. Lack of opportunities, job opportunities, income generation activities, and also the quality of education. I think we are not doing justice to the families, communities who are over there. Situation of hopelessness, you talk to the people and you can easily make out, and it's always in their mind, if it's not coal, then what else? Right? So they are living with a lot of uncertainty, and how far someone can live with uncertainty. Everyone would have seen the Gangs of Wasepur movie, and because Wasepur village is close to the Dhanbad, it has again triggered me to look at from this perspective, not from the entertainment perspective, but looking at it from those perspective, what I had seen over here. And over here, we are in the process of implementing a project with TERI, and we have taken 6 villages, 3 from the Giridih open cast and 3 villages from the Kabriwat mines. And we are going to do a lot of exercises in terms of helping people co-creating the business ideas, livelihood orientation, what would be the livelihood orientation, financial literacy, which is very, very important component. They are earning money, but they are living on day-to-day life. Tomorrow, they again have to go back to the mines, whether to do or unauthorized mines. So we have to make them understand how they can save money, invest money, access the different entitlements which is being provided by the government, so that they have a better tomorrow. And our target would be at this moment of time, adults and girls and women. So thank you very much. We had just started the pilot, and I'm sure like closer to the 5-6 months, we will be able to bring more insights on the table. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Madhuban Pandey. You gave us really what is happening at the ground level and what is your experience. Since we have already overshot the time, I would like to request Dr. Jayant Mitra to just conclude this whole discussion in his own words. And then if we have some comments and some discussion possible, let's see. Please.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, it is wonderful. It's really insightful listening to all of you. And I think we can go on talking on this complex theme throughout the day. And in fact, this is just the beginning. We should keep this dialogue alive. And so I think leaving no one behind is something, that is very powerful thought. And that took us every corner in this country, that took us to the field, that took us to all stakeholders in the value chain and the experts we have interacted with, and we are still, that discourse should continue. And in the process, we sense that, transition, change, which can happen incrementally. It can't happen overnight. There is no magic wand that things will be revolutionized overnight. But, how do we do it? How do we do it is the core question. And for that, we have to really come together. We have to leverage, various strengths that we have in this house, in this room and beyond. And we have to leverage different resources that we have at different levels. So the complexities are enormous. So how together we can minimize vulnerability is the core question, and we need greater reflection, and we need to deepen engagement at the local level and really demonstrate certain things that work on the ground, that actionable pathway we need to create. We can co-create, and we ensure in the process that we have a more inclusive world, and an alternative trajectory before us, to create a more cleaner future. So that's it, I have to say. So let's come together. Let's take a resolution that many younger colleagues who are here in this room today, they don't repeat the same sentiment 30 years down the line. So by then, I hope nobody would be left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the concluding remarks. I now request all the panelists to come together for a group photograph. With that, we come to a conclusion to this thematic track. We will now proceed for lunch. All the participants must have gotten a coupon code for lunch. So that is in the hub. And the speaker's lunch is in Silver Oak Patio. So the way to it through is the Silver Oak Hall number 2.